Okay, it's Kara here. Some of you may know me, some of you may not, but I'm just coming on camera to say hello and be a little, I guess, exposee on the on the project that I worked on and partake on this journey of the Coreism guided art, which started off as guided art until we realized what it really was, until Rob became a little bit more in tune as to a better way of describing it as Coreism. And I just wanted to, give a little bit more perspective from my angle here. I kind of, I was introduced on, Rob's personal page as somebody he knew who I was a little out there, and he didn't understand my dynamic as far as just that I was somebody who wanted to sponsor the artwork, and it didn't start off that way. I was just a supporter of it. I had no intention of sponsoring anybody or doing any inclusive work as far as financing anything, or I was on my own devices and left a marriage after 25 years and was just following my heart, my guided heart, as you will, as we term this so aptly, following our passions in life. And I just happened to stumble across Rob right at the same time that I was about to disembark from my old life and my old programming and my old way of that all I knew for 44 years to leave the grid, or go off the beaten path, right? That was very well worn and beaten up, to try something new and pursue my heart and whatever else was guiding me in the flow of this universal dance that I seem to have tapped into or bumped into me or something, because I chose to pursue my heart and my soul. So, and it sounds all woo-woo and esoteric, but it just became this deeper experience that I had no clue what I was going into. I was clueless as a box of rocks. And when I met Rob we first connected in December of 2012, I was already connected to a very intensive spiritual project with a spiritual teacher, healer, mystic, shaman, a mastery healer, and an instructor, and she'd been doing Reiki and she master Reiki. I mean, she was basically of a very intensive and high caliber and spiritual awakening movement of her own. She wasn't connected to anything or anyone. There wasn't any religion or cult or any crazy thing. Of course, everyone around me thought that that's what that was, but she was just her own illuminated being and coming into her own journey. And I worked with her for 3 solid years before I met Rob, so I was very versed and aware and you could say seasoned, for lack of a better word, in the depth of the core, because it's basically a deeper dimension of your soul, and it's the space, you can call it heaven if you want. I mean, it's really is your true authentic realm of your truth, of your soul song, and of the space where there is creativity and oneness and infinite abundance of wisdom available, and that one can tap into. And as Rob has said many times, like Tesla has tapped into it, and many other artists, particularly musicians, they say, oh, this isn't for me. I was just given an open door, or I was listening at the right time and right moment, and I just closed my eyes and I concentrated, and all of a sudden a chalkboard pops up in my face, and my or a song pops in, and you're like, where'd that come from? That's not, I don't even know what the song, why I don't need to hear that, or what's that mean? And then you apply it to something that you're going through at that moment, and it gives you the answer. It plugs in the empty space, the missing link, the missing puzzle piece, or whatever it is of your project, or whatever your formula that you're waiting, or whatever it is. It comes in many different forms to whoever it is that's listening to it, or open to receive it, because they're focused on something that is driving them and guiding them, beyond just a casual imaginative interest and the typical box world. So this field wasn't new to me at all. When I had met Rob, and I had been deep into it for a good 3-4 years at that point. So when 2013 comes about, and I decided to, as being a documentary filmmaker that I am, I decided to reach out and come to Idaho, where Rob was, as he was pursuing leaving his current world of the mundane job behind, and it forced him out. So he went back into his standard field of financial security, for lack of a better word, with the vacuum sales. And it wasn't so much pursuing his work in the vacuum sales. I'd already was aware of that field that he had been in, and he knew that it was a lucrative option to pursue, even though he didn't seem to be interested in that. But it was just something to get him by. So when I headed out to Idaho in the spring, this was May of, was exactly this month, 6 years ago this month of 2013, when I embarked on this very crazy journey to just I was guided there myself, because the work that I had seen Rob do and in the art resonated with me in a very deeper level, and I didn't even understand. It wasn't just like, oh, that's interesting art. I hadn't ever I've dealt with esoteric art, which again is guided art, and I had been deep in that realm of visionary works that is basically provided to the recipient in a channel type of dynamic, where they're like a conduit and a receiver, and they're just open to receive the content, information, message, creative works that have been in their face, in their dreams or whatever. And when the time is somewhat right, or so we think it's right, then the content flows. And I had went through my own downloads of various esoteric wisdom that had been flowing into me, and I was like a Robert Langdon, as I had like the Da Vinci Code, where it was like I became the symbologist and decoder of signs and symbols and synchronicities and imagery and ancient writings and stuff like that. So I had been, this was an interesting field, as I felt that the art that I had seen a few pieces of Rob on his wall. I knew he was involved in frequency and alternative energy, the water and frequency technology, so that, which is exactly again the field I had come from, and been assisting and supporting as a volunteer and as a encourager. And then I became I put my own resources into these 2 previous projects that was all encompassing. It was 24/7, around the clock. I just became this catalyzer and facilitator, support, a primary one to 2 very intensive projects, which I've shared in the Who is Kara, What is Caritas video that Rob created, a little bit about my backstory. But I didn't really touch base on the deep on when I actually took the dive in there. I just went to the background that led me to that point. But come 2010 is when I first went deep into this type of work, and then 3 years later, when I met Rob and went into the Coreism, that's when everything went topsy-turvy and haywire, because I became within a couple months is when I realized that there was something again to this, that I had already committed my life to this field, if you will, to the field and to the people that I had were placed in my path, or that I had opened myself up to energetically, that the universe decided to magnetize us together. And Rob was this third person of this type of caliber, magnitude of a visionary artist, or inventor, creator, scribe, collaborative recipient and transceiver of this type of amazing work that to me was just needed to be shown and expressed and exposed and illuminated. And so that's what this guided art journey became for me. And it was just an interesting dynamic because I had made the comment, be careful what you, what you say to the universe, that I wanted these people that I had been working with for 4 years previous to Rob to, be, sponsored, supported, funded, so that because their works were not of a monetary gain movement. They weren't doing what they were doing to receive money. It wasn't about, I'm going to invest in this, I'm going to get a return on, I'm going to create this product and I create this works and this technology or whatever and receive money for it. It wasn't about an ROI or a commodity to be created. It was something that just needed to come out, and how it was going to be, be value exchanged in whatever. We didn't really know it, and it needed to be done, but somehow the content of all these projects that I involved myself in was nothing to wrap your mind around, or even how to, facilitate to a return of the investment. And when I connected with Rob in that summer, it's like I was more deeply involved in it at the time for some reason. I was compelled to become this benefactor, and I had said, I want to be my own philanthropist and be able to sponsor and support works like this. But I hadn't even started my own business yet. I hadn't even started my own foundation. Just the idea of it when I met Rob, so it was a little premature, if you will. To be, I had just my life savings to my name when I left home. With a carload of my personal belongings to start my whole life from scratch at age 44. Leaving my entire marriage behind, my family behind, everything I knew behind, to pursue my passion to get out esoteric works that my dear beloved soulkin that I had connected to exposed to the world, because I felt it was something that would help people, bring them to peace, bring them to awareness, consciousness, higher consciousness. It was based in love, pure love, that's in the universal, etheric environment, and it's something it's nothing you can wrap your higher consciousness and altered dimensions and 0 point technology or energy or other heart works and such. Is not something that's mainstream, so to speak. It's trivialized. It's considered. It's what makes up fascinating movies and the Da Vinci Code and tons of other entertainment that we partake in and find enjoyment out of, and we seem to all want to be part of this magical, mystical world of angelic and supernatural and this and that, but yet when it's actually real, potentially in your face, we don't want to hear about it. It's like, this can't be real, but we're entertained by it, so we're intrigued by it. But yet, when it comes to the real deal, everybody runs and hides. Well, Kara didn't run and hide. There was something mystical and magical that was happening with this work, and it was a drawingness, and it was like a magnetism that which drew me to the work, and within 2 months of meeting Rob in person, it's like all of a sudden I became, a benefactor. Of the work, meaning I wanted to see it come to fruition. When I commit myself to a project, and to heart work, I'm going to call it, I'm tenacious, and I don't mean adversarial. I'm like, oh my God, I want to, I become this complete advocate and support, encourager, like. I become the number one fan, the number one facilitator, and became this agent, marketer, promoter, the right hand, stabilizing force to support that beautiful soul that had been placed in my space, to help catalyze and ignite the works that they were putting out, so that the world could know it. And know about it, not about them so much, and it was never about us. It was about the work itself, and Rob's work was no different than that to me, as far as being of that same caliber, and something that was divine, magical, mystical, something that was soul provoking. So, that was the beginning of this movement, and I invested in 6 or 8 vacuums just to be involved, to help it, fund this movement, and it just catapulted from there.